Greetings and blessings once again, YouTube. This is John the Jansenist, and this is the second part of my dissertation on modern politics and as they pertain to the Jansenist/Old Catholic position. In the previous dissertation, I went through, basically in a stream of consciousness fashion, some points connected to the founding of America, which is the country that I live in, the people who founded it, and what their views are regarding both theology and politics and how they relate to each other. And I also got into the specific field of covenant theology, which was very influential in the dissenting opinion regarding the United States Constitution after the fact in America. And I particularly brought up the work by covenant theologian Samuel B Wiley, who was actually quite an interesting fellow, and I'm just going to read a little bit about him from the back of my copy of Two Sons of Oil, just to give you a little bit of perspective on why I feel a kinship with the covenant holders of the Calvinistic Presbyterian Church of the early America. Samuel B Wiley, 1773 to 1852. The author was born in County Antrim, Ireland. In 1797, he was forced to flee America because of his connection with the efforts made in favor of Irish independence. He became the first Covenanter minister ordained in America in 1800. He taught for a time in the Theological Seminary in Philadelphia and was later elected professor of Latin and Greek in the University of Pennsylvania. During the first decade of the 19th century, Reverend Wiley and Reverend James McKinney traveled throughout the South to abolish slavery from the Covenanter Church. Two Sons of Oil was hailed as the best presentation of the position of the Covenanter Church that has been written. Now, there's some good bits of information about the Covenanter movement. One of them being that they were very heavily instrumental in early anti-slavery efforts, long before we had an actual abolitionist movement. And they were also, in the case of Wiley in particular, very much interested in Irish independence, which is something that I, as a person of mostly Irish descent and the descendant of Irish independence supporters, am very interested in. But back to the actual issue of politics in America. One of the points that I went into just before I closed out last time had to do specifically with four differing viewpoints of government that are held by various parties in America. The first two of which I basically dispensed with as being not preferable as systems to follow, those being the church running the state or the theocratic model, or the state-run church, which is the Lutheran/Anglican model. The two remaining viewpoints are the two viewpoints that I believe are the most viable as a realistic solution to the current federal government problem that we have. In a nutshell, the problem with American politics at the federal level is that you have competing systems of values at war with each other. And the war is getting more and more radicalized as things go on. You have secular progressives that want a lustrous and large state providing many welfare services to the people living within the state. You have libertarians that wish to have a very wide range of freedoms while being held accountable in an economic sense. You have socialists and communist subversive types that are basically in it to gain control of the country and to turn it into something very different, actually something very similar to the South American model, which is basically a no-starter for me. That's something that I would never want to live under. And we also have the current conservative movement, which is basically battling between the sort of the semi-libertarian / paleo-conservative position of the Ron Paul movement and the NeoConservative movement. That's the strongly statist and also very much interventionist ideology of the current Republican Party establishment. And there's naturally differing layers of neoconservatism. You have some that are a little bit skeptical about the foreign adventurism, but like big government for various pet projects here in the United States. And you have others that want smaller government in terms of internal policy, but they really love the adventurism that our current foreign policy denotes. And the two prominent positions held by the two primary opposing groups, the current Democratic Party establishment and the current Republican Party establishment, represent variations on the two political models that I basically dispensed with. The Democrats are very much interested in a state-run church, although they've secularized a bit and they'd prefer just to have the state handling all of the usual functions of the church, which is encouraging charitable acts and basically looking after the welfare of the underprivileged and checking the greed and the power of the overprivileged, allegedly overprivileged in their view. And the current neoconservative establishment, by contrast, draws its ideology primarily from the Baptistic and Anabaptist movement, and to a smaller extent from the more, I would say, Baptist-like elements of the current Roman Catholic and mainline Protestant churches. And they are basically interested in governing more like a church. So there's a theocratic element there. Both of these viewpoints fail on a number of levels, but the chief one being is that they have two natural enemies, one being the Covenanter position, or the position that I have adopted, and the other being the secular progressive / libertarian position, which is the basically thought to be the appropriate and original intent of the United States Constitution, a complete wall of separation between church and state. The two do not converse with each other, they don't inform each other, they are separate entities, and that's the end of it. And realistically speaking, based on the radicalization of the current opposing parties, the best outcomes that we could get at a federal level would be either to fully embrace the libertarian model, which would be to divorce the most immoralistic aspects of secular progressivism, basically the federal mandates regarding abortion laws, in favor of a state answer to the situation, in which case various states can determine whether they wish to be pro-choice or pro-life, and basically a much more economically libertarian approach also, in which the federal government takes in less money and only uses it for specific functions. This is a practical answer for a couple of reasons. The main one being is that it does not necessitate a contradictory set of principles with that of the Covenanter movement, provided that certain things are also taken out of the federal government at the same time. As someone who holds allegiance first and foremost to the Holy Trinity, I cannot, as a person believing in covenant theology, subscribe to the idea that I must swear a pledge or an oath to a godless government. So if we're going to have a fully secularized godless government, we have to do away with oaths, and we have to stick to simple affirmations, such as the case with federal courts, instead of having us swear on the Bible, which is essentially swearing on the Bible is nothing more than really an old superstition left over from a compromise between the skepticism of the Reformers and the mysticism of the Roman Catholic Church, and it was adopted by the Anglicans, and we basically inherited it from them. It doesn't really signify anything biblical, nothing really religious to it, and even if there was, you know, the government has pretty well established that it's not Christian, so it really doesn't need to keep on masquerading as such with all of these various semi-liturgical props, so to speak. The idea of putting your hand on the Bible and swearing to God, 12 jurors symbolizing the 12 tribes of Israel, and so on. So if that could be accomplished, And if the people in the states that hold to the covenant or position and the Christian position are not obligated to subsidize or to agree with and celebrate the practices of the secular progressive government that is in contradiction with their own beliefs, this can be accomplished, and we can simply go back to the system originally intended by the deist founders, which is that the state-run churches, or basically the state churches, can have whatever relationship with the government that they choose to at the state level, and if you're not comfortable with this system, then you can vote with your feet and move to a different state. The other position, which is a little bit less unrealistic, but still in keeping with the idea of covenant theology, is the idea of a complete federal takeover of covenant law. But this in itself is not practical because there are not enough people who are covenanters. Even amongst modern-day practicing Calvinists, there's not enough people that know about this mode of thought politically to actually accomplish this. So insofar as the ends on our end are met, we can support the libertarian cause insofar as that if we choose to vote, we can vote for candidates that support that position. There's no oath-taking involved in being registered to vote. In many cases, it's done involuntarily whenever you apply for a driver's license, and you are not asked to take an oath. You can simply affirm by signature that you are who you say you are when you go into the voting booth. By contrast, running for office for the Covenanter is a difficult thing because no matter what level of government you're running for, you are taking an oath to uphold a constitution that is admittedly not a Christian-based constitution. And if it's not Christian-based, it's based on either another religion or no religion, and thus we cannot give it the credence that we would our own church by swearing an oath upon it. If we are given the option to affirm that we will carry out whatever duties are entailed in our specific office, that's a different matter. But as long as the oath is present, this is not the course that would be taken. Now, as I was stating earlier in the previous video, my aim in doing these is to essentially expose the Tea Party movement, which is very interested in rediscovering the roots of Christianity in most cases, basically to expose them to a viewpoint that is more in line with the more conservative party of the founders of this country, and also to expose them to the viewpoint that is supported by actual biblical testimony. And that basically wraps it up for this dissertation. I may do another at some point, but at this point it's pretty much up in the air. I basically covered most of the bases that I wanted to cover. So until next time, in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. God be with you.